I realized the first time I recorded this, it was a very long video, and I don't want to make it too long. And when I recorded it, my sound was off. I had it on the wrong sound settings, so it didn't record any um, audio. I think, you know what? I think God has a reason for some things. So this time around, I will not take as long. I'll get straight into it. I had a dream and this dream was about, I believe, to be 4 years ago. My memory isn't as good as other people's memories. I've seen, since then, I've watched people online retell their dreams and accounts of past maybe events, and they tell them and they know the exact date and exact time that they happen. I'm just not that person. Usually I remember little bits and pieces. If you're a friend of mine, you'll come up to me and tell me a story about something we did years ago, and I will sit there and stare at you for the longest, waiting to get to a point that kind of jogs my memory. But so this dream was about probably 4 years ago, and why I've taken so long to tell it on camera. I've been running away from it. Actually, I've told few people I care about, people I know and trust, and some people that I don't really know, but I felt compelled to tell. And reactions have been mixed from it, but I think that this dream really meant something. It was really significant. It was to me in my life, and I think sharing this at this moment in time, even though it's 4 years later, still has some relevance. Actually has just as much relevance as it would have 4 years ago, if not more. But in the dream, I was on a stage, and there were 6 or 7 other people on the stage with me, around 6, 7, maybe, I guess, around that many people, 8 people maybe, including the speaker. I guess you would call him the speaker or the presenter, because it was as if well, let me give you the setting of where I was. We were on stage in a church, like a very small church. I mean, maybe 70, I mean, the church was packed out, but there was just maybe 70, 80, 100 people in the crowd. And we were graduating. That was what we were going through, a graduation ceremony, like you would if you were in high school or college, but it was inside of a church, which led me to believe we were graduating from seminary. And I've never been to seminary before. I've recently wanted to go, but I haven't been to seminary. I really don't even know how seminary works completely. But at this time, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about seminary. We're on the stage, and the speaker was presenting the degrees to each of us on stage, and he was calling one by one each person, and I happened to be called last. And I don't want to get emotional, okay, but I happened to be called last, and instead of me walking up to him to grab my degree and him shaking my hand as he did the others, he came to me. And he leaned into my ear and he whispered into my ear. He said, "I want you to close us out in a few words and say a prayer." And instantly in my head, I started to think, like, why me? Why are you asking me to do this? Like, you didn't prepare me. I wasn't told this ahead of time. I don't have anything prepared. You put me on the spot. Well, I used to think that I was really well with speech until I had actually a really humbling experience in college where I went and spoke for the wrong reasons, and God definitely humbled me. But I've always thought that I could just on the spot come up with something to say in front of a group or a crowd of people, and without hesitation I could do that. And I've always thought that way. I've always thought I was quick-witted and had great speaking skills until that humbling experience. But so in my mind, in the dream, I was thinking, well, you You were asking me kind of late, but I got this. I can do it. I'll do it. I can do it. And so I agreed, and I was like, yes, I will. And so I stepped up to the podium after grabbing my degree, and I instantly, I looked out into the crowd and instantly started trying to speak, like what we do most times when we're in conversation. We don't even think, we just start talking. We just start rambling out, putting out stuff. And I instantly started trying to speak. I said, keyword trying. I was not getting anything out, and my thoughts were... The reason why I couldn't get anything out is because I was focused on 3 different things at once. I was looking out into the crowd, trying to think of what to say at the same time trying to say it, and then there was something that was drawing my attention on the back wall of the church. Now, I told you this church was pretty small, so the back wall was not that far from me. And so something was just pulling in my attention, but I couldn't look at it because I was trying to look at the crowd, and I was trying to think of what to say, and I was trying to say it all at the same time. And it was frustrating me inside because I'm used to being able to speak and come up with things to say off at the drop of a dime. And so out of frustration, I just finally said, how about we just close in a word of prayer? How about everybody bow their heads, and I'll close us out in prayer. And so I asked everyone to bow their heads, and as they bowed their heads, that's when I took the chance to look at that back wall and see what was drawing my attention. And the reason why it was drawing my attention so much is because there was this, to the left of all of us, there was this big glass like a stained glass window that you would see in like a cathedral or a bigger church. It was in the smaller church, and the sun was just shining straight through it, and it was just lighting up that back wall right in that spot where it was drawing my attention. And I noticed all of this. I was able to notice all of this when everyone bowed their heads. And I looked, and I noticed it was just lighting up this clock, this giant clock on the back wall. And I mean, it was a very big clock. I don't know how I wasn't able to see it before, but it was really big. And it was, what I noticed about the clock is that it was made out of this bronze, this brass looking material. It was just a giant old, it looked kind of old, and the bronze looked kind of old. It was like a brassy material. And since it caught my attention, I started really looking at it. I don't even know I couldn't tell you the time that elapsed. But I looked at it and I noticed another thing. And I want you guys to stick with me on this, because I know this part may sound, you might think of this and whatever, you might dismiss this and turn it off, but instead of the clock, I'm going to use my watch as an illustration, but instead of the numbers on there being numbers or hashes all the way around on the clock, there was little figures, little characters that were also bronze or brassy, little brass characters, little brass figurines all the way around the clock. From 1 to 11, there were brass figures. And instantly I felt that in my dream, I felt this represented, and this was me in my dream. This is not me outside of my dream, but this is me in my dream. I was like, oh, those are disciples. I don't know why I believe those to be disciples. But in my dream, instantly I was like, oh, those are disciples. If you were to show me pictures of disciples or anything, I wouldn't be able to tell Peter from whoever. They all, people don't depict the disciples as much as they do Jesus. If you saw a picture of Jesus, you would instantly know, yeah, that's Jesus. You would know by how he's dressed, by how his hair is, by the way he looks. Oh, that's Jesus. Even though we don't know what Jesus looks like, obviously. But disciples not the same thing. We don't have a constant depiction or representation of the disciples and how each individual one of them looked. But instantly in my dream, I was like, oh, those are disciples. I'm talking about tiny little figurines around a large clock. And I instantly went there. But the next thing I noticed is that at the 12th hour, the very top, right up here at the 12th hour, wasn't a figure of a person. It was a lamb. Obviously, your mind, you know where it goes when you think of lamb if you have any kind of biblical background or grown up in church. You understand what the lamb usually represents. But that is what was at the 12 hand or whatever, the not 12 hand, the 12th hour. And so I noticed all of those things. And then the next thing I noticed was actually the time that was on the clock. And the time read around, and that I still see that to this day, like the time, it read around 11:57, 58ish, around that time. So it was like the hour hand and the minute hand were almost about to be right about to be right on that 12th hour, on that lamb. And so after I noticed the time on the clock, I instantly woke up. That's when I woke up from the dream. And when I woke up, usually when you wake up from a dream, you're doing things, you're moving around, you're thinking about stuff, and you end up forgetting your dream. Well, I woke up from this dream unable to forget it, unable to think about anything else but the dream. I instantly was upset with the dream because I was thinking like, okay, this dream doesn't mean anything. It can't mean anything because there was 11 disciples on that clock, and we all know there were 12 disciples in Scripture. God chose 12 disciples. There were 11 on that clock. That makes no sense biblically to me. So I was kind of like already telling myself, I don't care how real you felt that dream was, because it felt very real. Every bit of it felt real. I felt like I was actually on a stage in front of a crowd of people. I felt the nervousness of having to come up with something to say on the spot. I felt the environment and the atmosphere, everything. Like it was a real situation to me. I was in a real situation until I woke up and realized that was just a dream. It was like I was there and it was happening. And I was wondering why was this dream so real to me? And initially I started to discount the 11 disciple thing, and I didn't really want to think about it too much, but I couldn't stop myself, so I called my mom and wanted to tell her instantly what my dream was. And I called her, and she didn't immediately answer, but she did call back, knowing that since I called late like that obviously there's something wrong, obviously, because I usually don't call much, and especially not late at night. So she called back and she asked me what was going on, and I told her I had a dream that I wanted to tell her, but I already told her ahead of time that what was bothering me about the dream, and I just wanted to hear her take on it. Well, my mom's very, I guess, to me, she's very wise. She's been through a lot of life. She's gone through a lot of things, and she's a woman of faith. Like, when I think about a person of faith, I think about my mom. I think about that's why she's the first person to call. I know she's my mom, but she has answers for me when I have questions, or she can point me to answers or tell me who to call or whatever. And so usually sometimes what she does is she won't give me an answer to something. She'll ask me a question, so I'll come up with the answer myself. She just won't give me an answer. So she started asking me questions, and I think one of the first questions she asked me, she said, so you said the clock was made of like a brass material or bronze. And she said, well, can you think of any time that you've read in Scripture where that material has come up? And she said, think about it. Take your time, think about it. So I thought about it a little bit, and I said, well, yeah, the Nebuchadnezzar dream. He interpreted the king's dream, and in that dream there was that material on the statue. That was part of the statue, had that material in it. And she said, okay. And she said, so she's already pointing me to where there's a dream involved, and then there's that material involved. She said, but there's other places. Can you think of another place in Scripture where that material shows up? And I started to think, and I'm like, okay, oh yeah, I remember. The brazen serpent that was held up in the wilderness. And she pointed me to that too. And that one had some crazy significance to me as well. But she pointed me to that one basically by asking the question, and she said, "Hey, you can, if you want to, comment below and correct me and my mother if you want." But she said usually when that material is referenced in the Bible, is judgment is attached to it. There's a type of judgment that is attached, and so that was one of the things she pointed out about my dream. And the next thing she asked me, she said, "Okay, how many disciples were called, by Christ? How many disciples were called?" And I told her 12. And I said, that's why my dream bothers me. There was only 11 on the clock. And she said, well, think about it. She said, I understand there were 12, but how many betrayed Jesus? And I said, okay, I get what you're saying. One betrayed Jesus, but he was replaced. She said, okay, yeah. She said, now go back to the Gospels and read about what happened when, and there was a time period, and I want you guys to read as well. But there was a time period where there were only 11 disciples, and there was a time where you'll have to read it, because I don't want to say it and get it wrong, but read it. There was a time period where there are 11 disciples, and something significant happened in that time before they chose, before the replacement for Judas was chosen. And so she pointed me to that. And then she asked me, she said, I want you to do something specific. She said, I want you to go to Matthew. And I can read this for you. And if you don't want to read this part, like if you don't want me to read this part out to you and you want to read it yourself, that's fine. You can skip through the video and get to the part where I'm talking about the dream again, I guess. Or you can listen to me read this without, and you won't have to get your Bible out and read it. But she wanted me to go to Matthew chapter 20 and read that, and then think about it. And so I did it. I went to Matthew 20, and this is what Matthew 20 says. It says, for the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, is an householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers unto his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and said unto them, why stand ye here all day idle? Notice he said all day, and he pointed out that this was the 11th hour, and he said all day. They said unto him, because no man hath hired us. He said unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall ye receive. So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. Remember this. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed that they should receive more, and they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, saying, these last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst thou not agree with me for a penny? Take that, thine is good, and go thy way. I will give unto this last, even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil, because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen. So I wanted to read that real quick, because she asked me to read that as well. And so I read it, and And obviously it's a parable, so you can come up, you can get your interpretation from it. But what I saw was a few different things. Was first thing I saw is that people were being called. People were being called to do a certain work, and they were being called at different times of the day. See, this parable is dealing with a day, but if you look historically at that time period, how the days were set up, people worked from sun up till sundown. When the sun went down, no more work was to be done. You work from sun up to sundown. So the 11th hour, when it speaks of the 11th hour, it doesn't represent 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. because 11 a.m. and that's not going to be the last hour. You're still going to have a lot of sunlight from then on. And 11 p.m. it's been dark for a while now. So the 11th hour represents the time right before the sun went down in that time period. And so he was calling people all the way up until that very last hour, and he still rewarded them all the same. So these had come early in the day, in the beginning, or the heat of the day, all of that, all the way up until the 11th hour, 12th hour comes. And that's a time where no man can work once the 12th hour hits. So it brought me to remember my dream and where the clock hand was and what we have. We have a short amount of time to do the work that God has given us. Christ called us to make disciples of all of the nations. Christ called us to lead others to Him so that they may be saved. And we have a short time to do these things. But my dream, the parable was pointing out that there are also people called in those last hours. And they still receive the same gift, the gift of salvation. They still receive the kingdom of heaven. They still receive the same thing as you or as a person that's been there for forever. And what strikes me about my dream is that I ran from this dream for so long. I ran from it I've told people, but I've run from it for so long. And 4 years has gone by like that. And I'm looking back now and realizing, man, where did the time go? See, I used to, when I was much younger, and I may look young still, but I'm not as young as I look. When I was much younger, I used to hear a lot from older people, especially older people in Christ. They would tell me, hey, do God's work now. Establish that foundation now. Because when you get older, you're going to regret. You're going to have so much regret. And I'm starting to, and I'm really not just starting to, but I'm actually realizing what they mean by that and why they were saying this. See, we don't usually listen when someone tries to keep us out of danger, when they're telling us not to do something. We experience it ourselves, and then once we experience ourselves, we understand. But when we understand, we put more on ourselves than we had before. See, I see a lot now. People are dying young, whether it's from suicide or whether it's from accident or whether it's from tragedies like shootings and school shootings. People are dying at a young age, as well as dying old. But people are dying young. But not only dying, people are dying in their minds. They're losing their minds. There's so many diagnoses out there for different types of mental disorders and different types of things that we bring upon ourselves over time. And what I'm saying is we're becoming addicted to drugs. There's an opioid crisis in our country. And I'm telling you, that steals your mind. There's so much that we bring onto ourselves with time that it's hard for us to pay attention to the things of God. It could even be just starting a new family. You could have been in life and chose a woman and chose a wife, started a family, had children, and now those children are your focus and your attention, or your wife is your focus and your attention, and as they should be, should have your attention, but they become so much of your focus and your attention that you use that as an excuse to say, I don't have any time for God. I mean, I'm trying God, but Don't you see how much I have to do? Don't you see I'm doing that myself? I'm using that excuse as an excuse, and I'm saying, God, I don't have the time. I mean, I don't have the resources. All my money goes to my children and my me sustaining life for them, and sustaining life for myself. I don't have the moment. I don't have a second. Or I'll say, God, I'm so tired. I've worked all day. Can I just lay down and go to sleep instead of getting into the Word or reading? And you make excuses, or you see, allowing yourself to miss out on the calling that God has for you, or even to prolong the period of not maturing into that calling. So you're running from the calling. You're running in that amount of time. What those older people were telling me is that you will accumulate things that are almost, it feels impossible to get rid of. And I'm not talking about children in this circumstance, in the worries of life, but I'm talking about sinful things. Things that you tried one time and then became a habit, and then you're doing it again and again, and then you realize, wait, I can't stop doing this. And now it's become a burden. Now it's become something that's like a thorn in your side. Something that keeps you from your calling. Keeps you locked in, or keeps you in bad choices and bad decisions. And now your witness and testimony doesn't look like, people don't look at you and they say, you try to tell them something, and they're like, but we know you. You're the guy who goes to the club every weekend and drinks and hangs. Wow, I don't want to hear that from you. So it weakens your testimony. And then 2 days turn into 2 years, and 2 years turn into 20 years, and then you're looking back on your life and you're like, where'd the time go? Or maybe you're not even looking back on your life and you lose your life and you don't have the time, not even a sliver of time, to do something for Christ. See, God is calling us in these last hours. And that's what I think my dream is telling me. From the time where the God calls me last on stage to give out the degree. And then the reluctance I had inside of me, and the things, the excuses I was making in my head for why me. I wasn't prepared for this. To the point of not even telling this dream to people. And now I'm using this as an opportunity to tell, whether it's never too late, but it's always a better time to do it now than to wait. And I'm an example of that. I wish I had started telling this dream a long time ago. I wish I had stepped out on God and on faith in God a long time ago, instead of trying to wait until now. Because who knows how burdened I am by these things. Who knows how bound I am. These things have a grip on me, and now it seems like everything is a distraction. Oh, I want a new car. I have things to take care of. I have a job to go to. I have to pay attention to my job. I can't be talking about religion at work. I can't. I have to pay for this car note or this car part to fix my car so I can get to work. God, I don't have time to do this, but I want to do this, but I don't have time. I want to, but I can't. Or I will, but you got to free up all my time for me. God says, you had the free time. You had all that time. And you let it all go. And now you're in a tougher situation, but I'm still calling you to the same thing. Still calling you for the same purpose. But now you put yourself in a tougher situation. So you still have that same calling. You still have to do the same thing. God is still saying, do this. Even in your tougher circumstances. Because you had it easy before. So, all in all, the conclusion I have, I mean, if you're pointing back to the dream, clock hand was on the 12th hour. Clock made of brass. Judgment. It was close to the 12th hour, I meant to say. 12th hour was the Lamb. So this is the time right before the return of Christ. Right before His return. And He's calling us in these last days to point people towards Him to be saved in these last days. So please don't delay that. calling, because you may be, you may not have another chance. As it says, many are called, but few are chosen. Be the chosen. God bless. And I guess that's it.